Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin. Well, it is March 11th, 2026, and it is spring in New York. And the sun is shining, but it is shadowed by the brilliance that we have in our studio today. So before we start, let's give a talk about the title of this show. To franchise or not to franchise? That is the question. Everybody has a cousin who thinks they could franchise something, and you're going to find out whether yes or no is the answer. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsors, Era Group and Ed Flanagan. Listen, you work very, very hard for your money. And a wise man once told me, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So if you're looking at those invoices and there's something fishy in Denmark, back to Hamlet again, if there's something fishy in Denmark, well, then call Ed Flanagan and the Era Group, and they will sift through your invoices. They will sift through your contracts to make sure you're getting what you paid for and getting the best deal possible. So if you're interested in keeping some of that money, call Ed Flanagan and the Era Group. Back to our show. To franchise or not to franchise? That is the question. How many people know somebody who says, yeah, man, you should franchise this? Well, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And I've got the people here to show you why. Donnie, why don't you introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, hi, I'm Donnie Bradley. I'm the founder of Lola Beans. We're a drive-through coffee, fun beverage, good energy brand based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay, thank you. John, say hello.
Good morning. Hello. This is John Moates. I help lead franchise development for Lola Beans.
Yes, and Jesse.
And I'm Jesse Bray, Chief Operating Officer for Lola Beans.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Fred, say
Good
hi.
morning, Fred Clashman, editor and publisher of Total Food Service. Looking forward to this.
Yes, and I'm Larry Sashin. So, I just watched Hamnet on in the movies, and I thought of this title: "To franchise or not to franchise?" That is the question. And you hear everybody say, "Oh, you should franchise this. You should franchise this." Everybody thinks it's a snap to do that, but it takes a little bit of work before you can even think about it. Donnie, why did you think you're franchisable?
Well, I think early on I had some really good business mentors, and we had a couple groups that came through the line early on. One was a former founder of a big national chain and his team, and they really looked at this, and we went through a process of them potentially taking Lola Beans over, but they showed me the plan. And then I had another friend out of Macon, Georgia, that had started ASP Pools and had sold to Authority Brands that had been in franchising for a long time. And I was able to kind of seek his counsel and kind of show him what was going on with this big group that had come in and go through that process. And he encouraged me to franchise also. Not right then. I mean, there was a lot of things we needed to do first and get ready, but I was fortunate to have what I call some business angels come into my life that kind of helped lead me down that road.
So, so why Lola Beans? What makes you different than the 30,000 other coffee shops within a 3 mile radius?
Yeah, it starts with the team that we put together and the bean team, as we call them, and how they interact with our guests. When you come through our line, you're not ordering from a speaker box. You're ordering. There's a barista directly at your car window, taking your order face to face. And so this is more about an experience and an interaction versus a transaction. We've got music playing. We've got a team that love each other, having fun, and then they're just carrying that energy over to our guest. And we're trying to make this all about the guest experience and close that decision loop with people that come through.
Fantastic, fantastic. John, so you get a call from Donnie. hey, I want a franchise, and it goes into that echo chamber in your head. I've heard this before. Um, how do you vet a Donnie to make sure he's worth your time, energy, and actually the money he spends on getting franchised?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it actually started a little bit before Donnie and I got connected. Donnie was connected to one of my mentors in the franchise industry, and I'll probably get this number wrong, but he's scaled 40 or 50 brands nationally. His name is Mark Treptow. He's great at what he does, and he had been connected to Donnie for I can't remember 4 or 5 months, and we were having conversations about what was going to be happening in the industry the next few years, and he's like, "You really need to talk to this gentleman down in Tennessee," and Donnie and I just I guess hit it off from day one, and we talked for several months before we even moved forward, and for me. It's a lot about leadership, about the intention and the motive of why you're doing something, and everything to seem to check the boxes on why Donnie and Missy, his wife, wanted to franchise. They wanted to bring their idea to other communities. There's plenty of ways to grow, not just franchising, but that is a great way to do it. And especially there are people out there and there are other communities that care for their communities as much as Donnie and Missy do. So I saw that in them when I first talked to him and then first met him, and I was hooked.
Okay. So, what is the
So Larry,
process?
hold on
Okay.
a second. So what are some of those options besides franchising so that you arrive at franchising? What are obviously corporately owned? Talk a little bit about that for a second.
Yeah, corporate and private. Donnie's had opportunities to, sell to other large groups, but he's decided to stay and franchise. So, I mean, I think there's private equity and corporate, but franchise for me is obviously a very asset light model, very, not as capital intensive. And, you just have to really get good at finding someone like you that has that same work ethic, that same culture. One of the first things that I saw when I went into the Cleveland store, right above inside and the guys know this, inside the store above the sliding doors, there's a big sign. I reference it all the time, and it made an impact on me. It says, "How do we make people feel?" And there was thought and intentionality in putting that together in a very nice, it wasn't just like scribbled up there. And you don't see that all the time. And I've been fortunate to work in 19 different restaurants or different franchise companies, and there's only been a couple that have had that kind of motive. And
Hmm.
then the other motive was, they really, Donnie cares and Missy care about their people. They see that these kids, I call them kids, I'm 51 years old, they're, 18 or 19. Um, there's only been two concepts out of those 19 that have ever said in front of me and to other potential franchise partners, we see that these kids are not going to be with us forever, and we want to instill in them something that will go on and help them in the later parts of their life. And they live that out. So I don't know if I answered your question,
You
but
did, absolutely. Right with that, how do we make people feel? I mean, I've never heard
yeah,
that before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Donnie, where'd that come from?
It actually comes from Truett Cathy, the founder of
Chick-fil-A. Yeah.
Chick-fil-A. I'm a big fan of what he's done. I, through this journey, I've been trying to study leadership because I think, when you're talking about to franchise or not to franchise, I think the first thing is, are you ready to grow as a person and love yourself enough to learn leadership, take care of yourself, get physically ready, get mentally ready to lead correctly and pour into other people because it's not about you. Leadership's about taking care of other people and building them up. And so I studied Truett Cathy. I love Tim Kite, who was on Urban Meyer's uh, coaching staff, who never played football, but Urban Meyer brought him in because of his leadership. And so, you know, that's where that came from. And it's a matter of, we've got messaging all throughout the store. And it's a matter of having that messaging go from their head and them seeing it to into their heart to where it is truly locked in a core value. And that's one of the reasons I brought Jesse on, is Jesse's got a background and started in training. And so I'm like, how do I communicate this message? How do I get this message and communicate correctly to our team without wearing them out like an old dad with all my old dad sayings? And it's all going to be on the training and how we pour into these kids. And that's the reason I brought Jesse on. But it's founded in, what Truett Cathy did and a bunch of other great leaders that I'm trying to study.
Yeah. So, what is the actual setup of a coffee shop? You say the first thing they see is somebody face to face speaking to you. What makes you different than every other coffee shop?
So, so there's two lanes. So when you pull onto our lot, there are two lanes that come down to the side of the building, and you come underneath the canopy, and there is a sliding door. It's not a drive-through window. It is actually a sliding door that opens up. And so when you pull up, you're looking right into the kitchen where everything is being made. We want to keep that sliding door open, so there's the connection between the staff and the people that have pulled up. There is music playing, and we just want to make it where when you pull up, there's that connection. You're not ordering from a menu board, and then you pull up, and then you get your coffee, and then you're on your way. It's a different atmosphere. We're trying to make the experience completely different than what you would see at some other transactional concepts where you order, get your coffee, and go. So,
And to add to that, coffee's only half our business.
yeah.
So we have a whole different section of beverage on the menu that is energy drinks, what's affectionately known as dirty sodas. And that takes up a whole nother portion of the business. So our day part is much longer than just like the morning, I'm going to grab a Joe and I'm going to drive into work. So
And so you don't end at 4 o'clock after you eat that last cup of coffee.
that's
You guys
exactly
are-
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's really the difference when it comes to our offerings.
So, Donnie paints a beautiful picture. John is facts and figures. You're the guy who has to fulfill all the promises they've made, not only to the customer, but to your customer, which is actually the franchisee.
Correct.
So, talk us through that proposition there.
So it's not an easy proposition. And to go back to franchise or not to franchise, that is a real big question that you should ask yourself is, why am I doing this? Why do I want to do this? And then what are the pros and cons? Because one of the cons is that I do have to ask to a whole nother group of people that are investing in your company. It's also a huge pro, as John said, because it's light on capital and you can grow faster. And I'm talking about the franchisees themselves. You have to be willing and able to listen to their feedback because they're the ones that are going to help you grow. And to deliver on that promise, first and foremost with our team members, is you have to do what you say you're going to do. So we believe that we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They have to see you deliver on X, Y, and Z. The franchisees are the same way. The franchisees want to see specific things. You have to deliver on those items, but you also have to listen to their feedback. So delivering to both worlds is both an up and down stream and not just a top to bottom.
Okay, so
What has come out of that feedback, by the way? What are we talking about?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to our team members are concerned, one of the best things that came across was one of our general managers came in and said, "Hey, we can really be more efficient if we change the operations into stations and rotate these stations throughout the day so the team members don't get bored." And so throughout the day, they're consistently every hour switching positions and rotating. And it has increased our productivity, it has increased our engagement. So that's one of the things from inside the four walls. And then from the franchisee's perspective, it is the prototypes that we're working on with them. They've been hands-on and very engaged in trying to get a building that can be replicated at the most cost-effective way that we can do across the country.
Yeah. So
And that's
that
just
also,
two of the 45 things on my to-do list as of right now.
Interesting.
That's why I have no hair.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, I don't even have
Yeah.
time to comb it.
the two CEOs, Fred and Jesse, the hairless duo. So listen, that to me is a great concept that opens up a training can of worms
Mhm.
because you have to train. First of all, you have to train the franchisee to be a carbon copy of Donnie. They've got to be a warm, bubbly, outgoing guy. He can't be a guy who sits in the back and counts his money. He has to be a team leader, and then training 18-year-olds to do two, three different jobs. How do you accomplish that?
Well, first and foremost with the franchisee, that's really on John's world, but it's about the selection process. Like, do they jive when we have those conversations? And so the franchise process, for those of you that don't know, is really a long process. So someone fills out an application, and then after you fill out the application, you review it, you call them. If it don't jive and you don't feel that connection, it's over. And then they meet with Donnie, and if Donnie doesn't have that connection with him, it's over. That it's like hiring your own employee, but it's someone that you're going to entrust your name, your brand, your history, your legacy, your culture with. And so it's not just a date. Like, this is a long-term engagement marriage process. And then with our team members, and you'll notice I say team members instead of kids. So when John said I call them kids, Donnie and I were laughing because I'm trying to get everyone out of that notion of just calling
Oh,
them
I didn't.
kids. Like, they're our
Yeah.
team members,
No.
right?
Yeah. Me and Missy do that constantly.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
with them, it's about telling stories. And so, in my history with training and operations, you train a lot differently depending on the type of brand and the type of business you have. Our team members respond more to stories and more organic communication. So, when it comes to teaching them the culture and the philosophy and how you teach customers, we just actually interviewed our own team members and said, how do you recognize first-time customers? And then we record that inside of a video, and we allow them to have that flexibility and that organic nature to communicate that to the customers that are coming through the drive-through.
Okay,
And
so John, back to you. All right, so somebody walks in, sees you at a show or wherever you are, wherever you're pitching your product, and says, "I want to buy 50 of these." Okay, so he's waving a lot of money at you right now. How do you vet somebody like that to make sure that this is the right fit and
Well,
you can service them? And you have to be able to service them,
yeah,
Location is important.
and Jesse touched on it already. It's really kind of a multi-tiered process. I'm the front line, the front wall when that comes through, and obviously that individual we mentioned has the capital to move forward, but it's not about just being able to stroke a check. It's about, do you align with our culture, and are you a fit? Because I mean, this is pretty much like a business marriage, right? We've got to both like each other and have both of each other's interest at heart. Um, and we've got to be able to understand what their motives are and what their goals and their vision is for their life. Because a lot of the times they're putting at risk their own, family legacy of wealth that they've built. So you have a great responsibility to put in front of them a great opportunity. The flip side of that is they have a responsibility to adhere to the system that they're coming into. So you have to find out if they're the type of people who are going to come into a system and adopt what we found and see that we have something special and get behind it and help us expand. What I notice about those types of groups that have 40 or 50, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a great kind of up and coming concept in a part of the segment of the industry that's climbing, and maybe where there's some significant competitors like what we have, but maybe there's limited opportunity in their market and they're looking for, something that they maybe missed out on, and we're a great fit for that. And those types of groups don't generally want to come in and change everything. They want you to hand them the book, and they're very skilled, and they know how to operate, and they know how to create stores and develop territories. And they just want to, take everything that Jesse and Donnie are building and duplicate it. And we've got that, right now when our first franchisees, the Jeters, Kirk and Colleen Jeters, that are legacy McDonald's operators and legacy Wingstop and Crumble Cookies. They're very skilled at what they do, and they're just looking to not only take what has been built, but also infuse, maybe some new ideas that we've been open to listening to. And I'll let the other guys kind of talk about from that standpoint.
For John, for me, it's simple. It boils down to, I've got my three kids work in this business, and it's what I want my three kids to be working for this person and be mentored and led by this person. And if my gut says yes, and I can check that box, then, that's kind of like the final thing for me is do I want my kids to be around this person, and will they help them grow? It's kind of what it boils down to.
That's a tough test.
Great way to think.
That's a tough test.
Yeah, but do you want your kids to be working for this person and be led by this person?
Yeah.
So are you better off with an experienced franchise group like the Jeters that you just talked about, or are you better off with somebody new who you can mold? What's the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, I'll answer to that one. So
Yeah.
I think that you're as an emerging franchisee or franchisor, it does depend on what model you want to go with. For us, it's going to be a blend of both. You want most of your franchisees to be the large experienced operators, because when you're an emerging and starting off franchisor, you don't have all of the processes in place, or you don't maybe necessarily have this big, huge support center of 50 to 200 people be out there. So you need individuals that have experience, that know what to do, that really want to get in, but then also, as John said, can give you that extra insight and feedback from their experience that will help improve your operations and attract more franchisees. Now, conversely, if you are on the other side, which we're going to get franchisees that are independent individual operators that don't have much experience, that, as you said, to groom them. Grooming takes a long time, and it's not easy. And it adds a lot more extra complexity to the franchise model, because you have to guide them every single step of the way. And you have to follow up with them a lot more than you do with multi-unit experienced operators. And so you really have to gauge what it is that you want to do. For us, it's more of the multi-unit operators with an infusion of some of those other groups that fit inside of our culture that we know can fall in with in step with the Jeters.
So you've got a prospective franchisee. He happens to be one of those guys who's, it's his life savings that he wants to come in. How does he enter Lola Bean U and become a Lola Bean person? How does he get trained?
Well, I would question if we would let someone take their whole entire life savings and come into the
what
game.
I mean.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, right. I mean, because
give me a break.
It's a huge investment for them to come in. And so what it looks like is, after we go through the whole entire vetting process, then as soon as they sign on the dotted line, I myself call them, and then we go through and we start to immediately get into what site selection looks like. Let's get inside your marketplace. Let's go through and let's try to figure out what the first places that you want to go. And then after we get the site selection process done, as we get closer to the lease being signed, we're going to bring them into our corporate locations inside of the Chattanooga area. And they're going to spend about 3 weeks with us, going through every single position, every single station, and then go through all of our systems and processes and training before they go back and get ready to open their own venue. And then we head down and we help them open those first few restaurants.
So talk a little bit about the vetting of real estate and what that process looks like.
Yeah, so great question. When it comes to the vetting of real estate, the franchisee is going to put together several different sites that they want to look at inside of a marketplace. We compile it all together. We first and foremost review it remotely. Google Maps, Google Earth does a lot of good work. Like, does the trade area look good? Is it a good intersection? That's the first thing. And then we look at the demographics, traffic counts, all of the financial all of the financial from the lease. What does the structure look like? And then what does the potential revenue look like? And then we go down and visit, and then Donnie's the final blessing on the site selection itself. Does it have the right vibe to it? There might be something that we're not familiar with. Like we were looking at a couple sites recently, and we were just like, if these darn trees weren't there, this would be a home run site. And that's stuff that you're just not going to know that a real
Right.
estate agent's going to send you. So you have to be boots on the ground to kind of go take a look at it.
Yeah. No,
Interesting.
and just to add to that, I mean, you have to drive onto the property and off the property. And can you make those left turns? Is it easy in and out? Is it where people are going to live their life? Are they shopping and doing, they're doing grocery shopping? Are they working out? Is it in their pattern? And then, make U-turns and head down other spurs of it. And what does it look like? And what is all the co-tenancy and who are all the people and all the different brands that are in that market? And just so you get a lot of good information, but you have to
Touch it and feel it.
you got to
Yeah,
touch it.
and one thing
Yes,
I
right,
would
that's
add
it.
into that is that, that's another reason why working with multi-unit skilled operators is that know their market and know the everything that Donnie's saying that work well in that type of environment and see a gap and an opportunity.
Well, folks, time is always our enemy. And we're coming close to that time where we have to say goodbye. But before we do, I have to thank our sponsor one more time, Ed Flanagan and the Era Group. Listen, if you think you're paying too much taxes, call Ed Flanagan and find out about the IRS 125 cafeteria plan, and some of that money you're spending for your employee taxes will go right back in your pocket and your employee's pocket. So call Ed Flanagan and the ERA Group. Well, this has been a great show. This has been a fantastic show. But before we leave, I want to go around the room and leave that one bit of information with people so they could remember this show. We're going to go in the same order we started. Donnie, you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to if you're thinking about franchising your business, you've got to be you got to have good unit economics and you got to be able to support correctly. But again, it goes back to, are you ready to take care of yourself and pour into yourself and become the leader that you need to be in order to even start doing this? Because if you're not a good leader, you're going to attract the talent that you deserve, basically. And so it's all about building a team that can help you scale this out, because you definitely cannot do it by yourself. So,
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Larry and Fred, for having us on. I would say, if you're out there and you've been looking for that one special concept with a great team and a great culture with the right motives, Loyal Beans is a great opportunity. I'd love to speak with you.
Okay. Last but not least, Jesse.
You can't scale hustle. You have to have systems and processes in place. And as Donnie said, you got to have a team. You can only go as fast and grow as fast as your team can take you. And so you've got to invest in them. You've got to give them the right training, the right tools, and the right operating systems that they can be successful in.
Okay. Guys, thanks for being on the show. Fred, I'm sure you have something to say.
Well, I think what it does, it brings up a question, which is, has this business become so sophisticated now that we're really all searching for the multi-concept franchisee? And what is it like trying to get your share of that marketplace, with the idea being that they have access to the right real estate and they have access to the right capital and banking relationships? And that fascinates me.
You know, there's a billion franchises out there. It could be as simple as taking a hot dog roller and putting it on your countertop and a bun warmer, and you have a Nathan's. You have a Nathan's. This is not one of those. This is not only franchising a store, but it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle has been set by a fine example set by Donnie and how he feels. You know, it's more than a store. It is a lifestyle. His employees step across that threshold and they're no longer in the environment of home. They're in Lola Bean land, and you know they act accordingly. And if they're smart, they take what they learn in Lola Beans and carry it throughout their lives. All I know, I mean, I just met Jesse today, but I know John for years. And if you want a franchise and you're interested in a franchise, not just Lola Beans, call John. Get a hold of John. John, how do they get in touch with you? Email address or something, or a website?
John at SHCChospitality.com.
Okay. Call John or email John and tell him what you're interested in, and he will either say, oh, you're great for Lola Beans, or he can point you someplace else. The idea is if you have something to franchise, if you have something that if you want to franchise, give him a call or give him an email. Guys, thank you for being on. We're going to be back next week with an interesting show. We're going to do a coffee with Jane and Dan Miser, the founders of the 85th Day Food Community and Stone Acre Farms, family that does restaurants and education for the masses. So come back, see us next week. And until then, I only have two things to say. Everyone, stay positive, test negative, and I'll see you next week. Bye now.
Thank you, guys.
So much.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Larry.